music? China? What are they even saying? What is this Chinese rap music? Sounds like they're just saying ching chang tong.
My chance new go watch made in China. We play ping pong ball made in China.
Hello and welcome to China Econ Talk. I'm your host, Jordan Schneider, here today with Kat Gu and Suji Yen, authors of the GitHub Anti-996 open source license. Thanks for coming on China Econ Talk.
Yeah, hello guys, I'm Suji.
Hi, I'm Kat.
So maybe let's start out with you guys doing a little bit of a short self-introduction.
Yeah, so actually Kat, she's my wife, and I'm born in Shanghai and spent 17 years in Shanghai. And then I then go study computer science in UIUC, University of Illinois. And after that, I spent 1 year in Tokyo, U of Tokyo. Then for some reason, I decided to start on my own venture, on my own stuff. So I dropped out and I started doing on my own business since 2017. But before that, I was also spent some time, working on media as a part-time journalist.
And yourself, Kat?
I also study in US in U of I. We are actually from the same school. I studied biology at first, then I transferred to environmental science. I got a bachelor degree in environmental science and also a master degree in environmental science. I also had a JD degree. After I finished my JD degree, I kind of feeling like I'm not suitable to be a lawyer, so I want to do something I'm interested in. So I applied for the information science PhD program, but I only stayed in the program for half a year because we kind of met each other and he wanted to drop out. I think maybe because I've never worked in a real company. I always doing my research. I basically literally stayed in school for 8 years. I never just come out. So I want to learn how the real society is like. So I just kind of took a temporary leave.
Sure.
Yeah.
Suji, can you talk a little bit about your first engagement with the open source community?
Oh yeah, I started programming, I think when I was 10, maybe 10 or 12.
Yeah, but you said in high school you studied history for the Gaokao.
Yeah. In high school I studied the history for Gaokao, but I didn't go to the Gaokao. I go to take the SAT. But I realized, at that time there's some Chinese company that go IPO in the US. They're very large, and all the news is reporting them. But I'm very interested in software. Not only IPO, but more about the software behind these companies. Mm-hmm. So I take a look and I found out, these guys really great in business, but their lack of, those contribution of software development in the open source community. And then I started reading books, and many from Richard Stallman and Linus and all these old programmers who invent the ideology of open source community and open source movement. And when I graduated from high school, in the first year of my college, I was kind of free, and I noticed that there's some Chinese media such as Q Daily. They're starting to write some articles about the open free software movement, but they're not really good. So I wrote an email to the CEO of this media and say, I can write a better version of these articles. So they say, yeah, you can app. Then when I was 19, I came out with my first article in mainstream Chinese media. It's about Microsoft and open source community, how they help each other become better. That's the 40 years anniversary of Microsoft, I think.
Yeah.
Then I start to learn a lot, not only as a perspective of programmer, but also a perspective of like a journalist.
Sure.
Yeah.
So could you explain for the listeners a little bit about the story of Linux and the impact it had and what it ended up doing for software in general?
Yeah, the story of Linux is Linux is founded by Linus, and Linus is the name of the guy. And I think he started writing the code of Linux when he was in college during his summer vacation. And after he got some draft, he was inspired by Richard Stallman, the founder of Free Software Foundation, Richard Stallman gave a speech at the Finland College at the time, and Linus is in the audience, and he think that's so cool. I should make my software free and open. At that time, if you remember it, I mean, if the audience remember, that's the good time of Microsoft. Microsoft is so huge, so big.
Mid-90s, yeah.
Yeah, large company. But gradually, after the fighting of all the OS operating system, after fighting of all the Unix compatibility stuff, Linux actually is going very, very well. And when Linus, he moved to the Silicon Valley, after he graduated 80 years, the Linux is actually one of the mainstream operating system used by developers.
Sure.
And then comes the dot-com bubble. And dot-com bubble is busted because of the U.S. government, the Congress, the Microsoft. But still, I mean, after dot-com bubble, people start to realize there's something called cloud computing stuff. Yeah, and Linux is definitely the top choice because it's open source, it's free, everyone's, can change it, but only if they obey the same rule, they're willing to contribute something to the community. So the cloud computing business...
Sorry, so just to pause. So open source versus not open source software means that anyone, basically, who are the people who are generally writing open source software?
Oh, at first it's just university college professors like MIT, Berkeley, UIC. These guys have the college license, the MIT license, the Berkeley license. They got public funding from DARPA or the local government. So they think that let's better publish everything to the public.
Sure.
So that's the very old time in the 1960, in 1970.
Yeah.
But gradually, people like Richard Stallman, he think, okay, it's good that we publish this thing to public, but we should prevent those companies to make it private again, because if you can take other people's public code to make it private again and sell it to business interests. That's not good. So Richard Stallman, he started thinking about, okay, let's have a new foundation called Free Software Foundation. And they got a new license, a new GPL license. He tried to persuade a lot of major developers, major projects to use that license at the time. Well, it's very tough, but it's very interesting that Linus, he followed this ideology and which become one of the largest operating system in the world after 20 years of development.
So what role does open source software play today in the global development community?
I think a lot of important fundamental infrastructure is open sourced. And even Microsoft today, they acquired GitHub, I think it's like $8 billion, and to endorse the open source community, to show their attitude. So I think today more and more companies, they're trying to endorse open source, and no one will say, okay, we will make the open source code private again. I think no one dare to say that. Yeah, and I think this open source thing is the fundamental of the internet, because internet is the World Wide Web is invented by Tim Berners-Lee. He gave us his personal interest and makes a lot of things open source as well. Yeah.
What does it mean for industry that things develop faster, that more things are interoperable?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is interrupt faster is like the globalization. Everyone can enjoy it. Everyone can be part of it. And the second thing is more about the free software. It's like we all agree that, okay, don't take the public treasure for the business interest, but you can still build something upon it, but keep the code open.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the GPL GNU thing. Yeah.
So like when we write a software like today, it's actually very big. It contains like lots of like modules, like also like lots of like millions of submodules. So basically, open source it increase efficiency of writing software because you can use others' modules.
Sure.
You don't have to write everything from zero. It's gonna take a lot of time. So if others write a small module, you can combine all the small modules into a big one. So sometimes, if we use open source software, you can just spend like 1 or 2 days to write just a big software.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's come back to the labor issue. You guys have spent a fair amount of time outside of the U.S. I'm curious outside of China. Yeah. I'm curious how you first were aware of, maybe had some connection, had some interest in the labor practices, particularly of Chinese firms.
Yeah, I mean, the 996 thing, I used to work in a local Beijing startup in 2015. At that time, I don't think there's a 996 thing. Because I know there's some companies, they do work very hard. Sometimes they do work overtime. But when I talk to my friends or other startup founders, they won't say that we're 996. There is no such concept. It's just, okay, we work very hard. We try to be successful. But after I came back in Shanghai in 2017, and I also travel in Beijing a lot for meeting investors and meeting startup founders, and I started to realize there's something called 996. Because gradually, after 4 or 5 years of the strong competition, people will think, okay, they work so hard, they will work harder. Our competitors, they raise a lot of money, we should work more harder. So they start to work overtime, and then they start to make this thing a standard. And the standard is called 996. It's like work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., and that's 12 hours a day, and you work 6 days a week.
Yeah.
That's terrible. And I think this is not so new. It's already been there, but when the industry make this thing a standard, or they give it a name, it's horrible. That's the first time I noticed. That's 2 years ago, 2017. But still, some companies, they are not willing to do 996. They try to say that we're good companies.
So first I want to say 996 it's not a local problem. It's just not China. Because there are actually many companies in India, also in the United States. Even we think it's a very advanced, place. Those small startups, they are also using the same model. Maybe not 996.
Big ones as well. I mean, we just saw BioWare, for instance, the publishers of Mass Effect and a number of other many successful games. Basically, there's a trend in the game industry, at least, where for the final 3-4 months of a project, it's called crunch time, and you see these stories written on Kotaku and other websites that cover this sort of thing, where they, people are going to the ICU because they've been coding for 14 hours a day for 7 days a week or what have you. So.
Another thing I think is, I have to say, China has done a really good job in cracking down the violations of labor law in traditional industry in the past few years. But I think most people, they don't realize programmers also suffer from the working overtime problems, because programmers, I think in the United States, I think they are considered as elite class, lawyers, professors, doctors. They think they got really high income, have a really nice job, have high benefits, but people just don't realize, programmers still, they are just like laborers, they still suffer from the same problem.
So I'm curious what you guys would say to some people who say, there are IEs who work cleaning hotel rooms for 16 hours a day. There's many other people in Chinese society who don't have nearly as bright futures, as highly paying jobs as those folks that do 996 or 997. So what's the critique there?
I mean, my opinion is okay, it's very lucky for software engineers and developers in the IT industry. They're highly educated, so they can realize this is wrong. And some of other laborers in other industry, probably they don't have the chance to study abroad, to speak many language, to have the highly trained skill. So it's very, very harder for them to realize, okay, this is actually not obey the local labor law. Yeah, so sometimes I saw it on Weibo, actually on other social media as well. They were arguing, okay, I'm a guy from media industry, I'm a guy from the banking industry, I also work overtime. Are you programmers just so, just making up the blacklist, and you're just maybe too? Sometimes are you considering us? We're also very terrible, but I think it's better. Let's say, okay, programmers are very lucky to notice this thing first.
Yeah,
I think one reason is because we are at the international like internet age or internet era. So programmers are a very important group of people because basically everything we use, like phones, like all the kind of stuff, rely on their contribution. But so that means like programmers, they have much more bargaining powers than low skill job, because low skill jobs can be like replaced very easily. But some programmers who are at a very important like position, they are hard to replace. So they have more bargaining power. So that's why I think it's a reason like programmers, they first realize the problems and they want to make a change to make things better.
Yeah, it's interesting because you've seen this labor trend a bit in the U.S. just over the past 6 to 12 months of Google employees walking out upset over Me Too payouts or upset with certain contracts for working with the government. It's fascinating seeing this, I guess, like labor consciousness form.
Yeah.
So let's come to your license. So this was very recently. You guys got this idea, right? So why don't you talk a little bit about the backstory of how it came about?
Yeah, so I mean, the 996.su GitHub repo is not, funded by us. It's some other programmers, anonymous programs, and a lot of contributors. They're kind of, complaining about their working condition, and they also have a whitelist and blacklist. But
shout out to Douban.
Yeah, Douban is the whitelist guy, and other company on the blacklist. But I think blacklist and whitelist it's just a guide for the job. It's like the Glassdoor in the US. It's powerful, but it's not enough. We already have Glassdoor somewhere. Also there's some Chinese version of Glassdoor. If you use GitHub, there has to be something more, have the spirit of the open source. And very lucky, 1 week ago, someone they started GitHub pull request, GitHub issue, and saying that, okay, why should we invent a new license? It's about labor law, and it's about protecting labor's right. And people suddenly think, oh, that's so fascinating, and that's the right thing that programmers can do. Yeah, because we have proper skill, proper mind to do it. But unfortunately, they don't have the law background.
Sure.
And I think
good thing you two are married.
We are married, yeah. Yeah. And I think at that time, no one were willing to help them because, no one pay you. I think I talked to some lawyers and they're not willing to help these guys. Yeah, and then that's a week ago. It's the Saturday morning.
Last Saturday.
Yeah, I talked to Kat.
So this is March 30th or whatever.
March 29 or March 30. Yeah.
Okay. March 30,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, I talked to Kat that, okay, we should take a look, and definitely you should take a look, because I know how the open source license work, but I'm not a lawyer and I don't have the law degree, and she actually refused at the first time.
Yeah, I say no because
because he's not paying you, right?
No, yeah, I didn't get paid for his for the things I'm doing for him. But the reason I say no is I thought it's just complain, like people complain about their jobs all the time. I complain about my job. Like my friends complain about their jobs. Like when you hang out with friends, like the one topic we'll always talk about is complain about their colleagues, complain about their boss.
Sure.
It's just complain. I thought it's just I don't want to get involved in this, but because he kept bothering me, like just check out the repo. I was kind of like, well, maybe I should just check out, at least I can look at it. And the way I look at it, I found it actually really fit into my research interest. So because my research is always on the combination of law and technology, how to setting the rules for new technology. I've done research on biofuel certification. I've done regulation of probabilistic risk assessment. It's a kind of a technique using nuclear energy. I also have write the blockchain course for Waseda University that's include law and regulation, also other economic stuff. So my research in this area, I think when I saw the Ripple, I think this is something that had never been studied, or has never been deeply studied. I think maybe I should just have a try.
Mm.
Yeah. So like every time like when a researcher sees a new topic, like he never touched and fits into his like research interests, he will be like really excited, really happy, just want to try it out.
Sure.
So that's my intention at the beginning.
Okay, so what happened? So you guys write a license, and then
Yeah, we spent a whole night writing license. We discuss the topic we want to cover in the license, because like all the open source license, it has to be international. First thing is it has to be international. So there are lots of things we need to consider, because what if a standard has to be international, you have to consider the authority of each jurisdiction. You have to respect each country's jurisdiction. So, but obviously those like programmers don't understand that point. So
Sure.
There's actually a version before mine. So they said like basically the programmers so the employer shouldn't force their employee to work more than 40 hours like per week, something like that. But that kind of standard is not international, because like each country have different labor laws. I know China is the work limit is 40. I think US is 40, and maybe India has different standard. Maybe Japan has different standard. But for standard to be international, I think it's just best for us to say like comply with labor laws of each country. So let's give just showing respect to their jurisdiction. And also we add some terms like, because I know there are some places like in Middle East, for those like dictator countries, like they may not respect the labor laws, or there are some places like the women's rights or are not respect, because some like women cannot be engineers. I think for those countries, like it's just better to require them to comply with the International Labor Convention, because that's a mostly agreed international like standard on labor protection. So we just try to consider all the things we want to cover, and we just write out the license.
Another thing to add on, I think, is how the jurisdiction work. Because, for example, a multinational large corporation, they can have different branch, and they can always pick the place that has the weakest labor law. And
for example, if there is a U.S. company, so they know like maybe India has less labor protection, so they can move just to open a branch there to force their like India laborers or India developers to work overtime, and then ship those like results back to the United States and sell that in the United States. I think it's unfair to people in India. It's that the situation. So we want those multinational company to comply with the laws of the jurisdiction where they registered or operate.
Sure.
So so in that case, in the case I mentioned above, so the place they operate gonna be like India, so they have to comply with stricter ones. That's gonna be United States.
Yeah, and actually this thing has already been in the WTO, I think.
Yeah, of center is already in WTO.
Yeah, and also in the United Nations, some of the convention. But unfortunately, no one thought this thing should be applied for the IT industry, because the import and export of software is, you don't see a thing, transport out of the country. It's just, you submit a pull request on the GitHub, suddenly it's in another country. Yeah. So it's, not a few people noticed this thing before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you write this thing, you put it online. Let's do a little bit more background before we jump into the aftermath. So the idea of open source software is that anyone sitting in their dorm room, in their office, when they're not doing their actual work at work, is publishing software online, which then anyone else around the world can use to build their own applications, build their own programs, build their own companies.
Yeah.
But the idea with this particular license you guys wrote is that it's saying that I'm going to do this free work. I'm a coder. I'm going to do this free work. But if you want to use this for your company you're building, you have to be sure that you're treating your workers in a certain way.
Yeah.
And if you're not, then you're open to suits. I can pull the software out from under you.
Yeah.
You won't be able to use my work that I've given to the world as a free gift.
Yeah,
Pretty much?
I always say, like, because many people don't understand, what open source license is. So I always say it's just it's kind of like a contract template. So I only write a contract template. So because for traditional industries, like, for if you want to transfer your right to an IP or copyright to others, you still have to sign a contract, like copyright transfer contract or something like that. This is exactly a kind of like simpler version it's kind of like simpler version of like copyright patent transfer contract, or a version that is like specific to the software industry. So it's the concept is actually very, very simple if you think of it as a contract. So if you want to use my stuff, you have to comply with this kind of terms.
Yeah. And I think GPL is like if you use my code, you have to open source your code as well.
Yeah.
And MIT is like, I don't care if you open source it or not. And our version is like, if you use the code under this license, you have to treat your employee according to the local labor law.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same spirit.
Yeah, the concept is actually very, very simple.
Okay, so you publish this, and 12 hours later, there's tens of thousands, now I guess almost 200,000 people who've started on GitHub.
I mean, before we published this thing, the 996 dice, you already got 10,000, more than 100,000 maybe, the start. But after
I think it's around 130 or 140.
Yeah. So the thing is, we publish it through a pull request. Someone's maintaining that repo, so we said, we got a better version of this license, and come from Cat and I, because we have some better graphical background. You guys check it out, and they think, wow, cool. And we should merge this thing into our repo. Then after they merge into this repo, people think, wow, people who can read English, who have some understanding of law, will think, wow, it's gonna work. So all of a sudden, more people start on this thing, and more interesting is that people. I mean, after 12 hours, I think there are a list of projects who use this license.
Yes, there are already more than 1,000 projects, like small, big. They're using the license right now.
They put a Hall of Fame, I think, on the README of that repo. Say that this is full list of projects using that license. It's like a Hall of Fame. It's very fast, just 12 hours. And now it's like already 5 days, and there's more than 100 projects starting using this license, and more than 1,000 trying to consider this. They're discussing this on WeChat, on Weibo, or whatever, Twitter, Facebook. Yeah.
Have you been surprised by the reaction domestically here in China?
Yes.
Yes. I mean,
we have actually never expect that, because as I said, the only reason I'm doing this because it's my research interest. So I have never expect, I'm doing this for fun. It's just like coding for fun. I'm doing this for fun. So I at first I didn't expect like someone gonna notice this. I didn't expect they will adopt this. I didn't expect they're gonna really use this, because it's a very, very simple draft.
Yeah. Compared to GPL is like 2-page long.
Yeah, GPL is very, very long. They have definitions like this, very long, very detailed. But at that time, I just wanted to write something that can be used immediately. So I choose the MIT license as a template. But MIT is only like 3 paragraphs. Mine only have like maybe 6.
Yes,
so it's very, very simple one.
Yeah,
I'm also surprised, because when I talk to other developers in China about free and open source software movement, I mean, they do know it, but they don't know how can this thing change their life, I mean, if I'm looking for fun, I can definitely write some code. I can open source it, but how this thing can affect my own life. But now I think after they saw this license, I said, oh, wow, if I'm working in a wireless company, and I'm contributing some large and great open source project, I can try to put that license in the project and make those people who work for a blacklist company have a chance to make those bots considered let's don't do 96.
Yeah. So the idea being this is a forcing function, both to get people talking about the issue as well as pulling the rug out under folks. Say you're a company that does a 996 or very aggressive labor hours or labor policy, and you want to build a new feature into your app or whatever. But if that new feature is built on open source software that has the license you guys wrote in it, then you either have to write it all new by yourself or change your labor practices, unless you're going to potentially open yourself up to having the software removed or a potential lawsuit. Correct?
Yeah, that's exactly the idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I want to add on that, this is how Linux or how the Linux Foundation overturned people's attitude of Microsoft. And I think this is actually a quite successful practice 20 years ago, happened in the United States. And I think this time can happen, or it's originated in China. I'm very proud of it. And I think this thing can be happen everywhere in the world. The power of open source is very strong, yeah.
So I just spent 2 years at a master's program in China and China studies, and doing it, I watched a lot of iQIYI, but didn't necessarily gain too many hard skills. Had I only known that at the University of San Francisco's new Master in Applied Economics, I could have learned something to actually make me super employable. R, SQL, machine learning, all that good stuff you actually see on job listings in Silicon Valley and Zhongguancun, not necessarily have you watched all of Juan Lesong. So in this program, you can study the economics of platforms, auctions, and business strategy at the same time as you learn the tools of econometrics, experimental design, and machine learning. Plus, for all those non-US students out there, this program is designated STEM, so you can apply for a 3-year extension on your student visa and keep working in the US after you graduate. To learn more and get an application fee waiver, go to usfca.edu/Jordan. So you've gotten a lot of attention from journalists like myself over the past few days. I'm curious what you think the foreign and domestic media has understood and has gotten wrong about this story.
I frankly have to say, many Western media, they kind of have a bias against this. They probably have some bias against China, so they think of this as a protest. But I think the 996 ICU, the main report, they write something like, this is not a political movement. And actually my project, the license project, is actually separate from the main project, because mine is purely a research project, because I started it as a research project. Yeah. My intention is, so I do think it's a very, very good opportunity for China's, high-tech industry in terms of, now in the world, only U.S. people or maybe a European and U.S. people are writing open source license, and the whole thing is regulated by an organization in the United States called Open Source Initiative, and maybe another called Free Software Foundation. So when I talk to their people, they think my license is not open source license, because they think open source license should restrict other people to use the software for any kind of purpose, even though the purpose is bad. But for me, I think there are some universal value that all the human beings agree. A good thing should not use for terrorism, maybe not used for violation of labor protection, maybe not for violation of people's right to their data or something. So there are some universal value that all the people agree. So I think an open source license should protect this kind of universal value, common value for the whole world. And I also think it's a very good opportunity for China, because I think because the China's high-tech industry is very strong. It's kind of it's always competing with United States. It's not just competing, it's also collaborating with United States. But I just want to say it's very strong, it's very big. But this kind of like strong or the power is only reflect in their maybe size, but not reflect in whether it has discourse power in setting the rules. I think it's very important. I think it's a time for China to start to participate in setting the rules for the internet industry. I think it's good for China's industry, the internet industry's development in the future. So that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I mean the open source or the free open source software should be international. And I mean, but in the past, there's a reason that only U.S. companies are involved, because at that time only U.S. got those developers. But now it's very different. I hope that all the Asia, China, Japan,
India
they
also
can
very
be involved
important
as well. Yeah, and another thing I think is very interesting that how Medium view this in different aspects.
Yeah,
like Wild and
Wild is
yeah.
a very good one, because I definitely, that journalist, he has a background in tech, so he knows what we say. Others, some of them,
we have to explain what is GitHub and why this thing happened there. There's a reason that this thing happened in GitHub, not on Weibo or Facebook, because this is a thing. It's a legacy of open source software movement, and it will have new spirit, new legacy, like the NT96 license. We will carry them to the next generation.
Yeah, I think like some of them, I do think, I'm not saying they are writing something like bad, but they just kind of like they ignore one of the very important aspect of the thing. Like it's value to the open and free software movement. They kind of they just want to write about the protests, but I think it's important, but it's not the only thing.
Sure.
There are other things they should look at.
Yeah, and I always told them, okay, the software license we wrote, after several decades of development, they can save a lot of people's ass. I mean, let's imagine that the overwork banker in Wall Street, you can't imagine these guys sue their investment banks, right? But you can imagine that these guys are using some great open source software for making their slides, for drafting their articles. And if one day these software, they have some ethical concern, I think that they will definitely gradually change every industry related with the software.
Yeah. Could you tease out that connection a little bit? How open source licenses can end up spreading from the technology industry a little wider?
So just for example, I will use the Wall Street as an example. So for example, the Wall Street, the company, there's a company, maybe an investment company in Wall Street, or on Wall Street, they're using some software. It's built based on some other open source software that are using the NT996 license. That basically means the investment company cannot force their people to work overtime, because you are using the software. The software, because it's not just about people creating things. It's it's not just people writing software based on the software. It's also about how other people using the software. Using means creating other software based on the software, or just using the software.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's what he means.
Yeah, and also some very huge projects like Python, the creator of Python, he already mentioned on Twitter that we should support something like this, and
He said N996 is inhuman.
Yeah, and
so
he even started the repo,
yeah.
on
So
GitHub.
just imagine Python have adopted the license. Basically means every project, as long as you are writing something using Python, you cannot if you are a company, you cannot allow your employees to work overtime.
Yeah, and
Again, the idea is it's not necessarily work overtime. It's overtime without pay.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
overtime that's not in accordance with whatever your nation's labor laws.
Just you have to comply with labor laws.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah, and maybe Python is too big or Linux is too big, but just imagine some new projects, but also very valuable project like Ethereum, like all the new fancy stuff, AI, blockchain, IoT. they're still new, and some of the fundamental library come from college, come from those developers. They're coding this for fun, and at first, I mean, when they heard of this license, they would definitely think about, oh, should we try? I mean, I think in the future, when there's more fundamental library is built by those guys, they will definitely consider to use this license or license with similar ideology to protect the labor right of developers, and then they can protect the labor right of every individual in every industry gradually.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is one of the fascinating things about software, right? Is it only takes one or a handful of people who, if they create a really interesting new powerful AI algorithm or something that works really good with the Internet of Things or self-driving cars or what have you, if you want to use that, they can sort of give it to the world, but set the terms. And using something like your license allows that person working in their dorm to set the terms in a way that they find ethical or humane or what have you.
Yeah, that's the idea.
That's the idea.
Anything else on this topic before we turn to data privacy?
We want to say it's kind of like related to data privacy. So we want to expand the license to some other area that where the universal value lies. The next thing we want to do is kind of like a data protection license, because data privacy issue is a huge issue now, and like people everywhere are discussing this issue. So we want to draft something. It's gonna be very similar. So just to force those big companies to not to misuse their users' data. Something like that.
Yeah. Like EU already passed the GDPR, but US still need a federal level law about data protection law. And I think, if there's, it's the same thing. If, for example, if the Southeast Asia or somewhere in the world, they don't have the data protection law, those large corporations like Facebook, they would just, still harvest data from this country. Yeah, it's very bad, but just imagine that, an international standard, such as a license, then can definitely help with.
Yeah, because for a company such as Facebook, you have to comply with the laws of jurisdiction where it is registered. It's going to be United States. It's going to be California.
Sure.
So they cannot store users' data, even though the users are in China or in other places of the world. So that's kind of like our next step.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the relative level of consciousness, awareness, interest in data privacy issues in China domestically?
I think gradually people for sure are realizing this issue. And especially people like Kat and I, in our age, we're so-called the internet age, and we use our internet citizen, and we use our international citizen in the internet age.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we use all those apps, all those services, all days, and I think a lot of people start to realize. But the thing is, we don't have an alternative choice. Let's say we know Facebook has got some problem. I mean, Twitter also got some problem. We know WeChat got some problem. We will definitely got another problem. It's very hard. I mean, for those industry giants to change by themselves
because they have no competitors.
Yeah, so either the community and the industry standard try to negotiate with them. Let's change the thing. Let's don't do this Harvard data stuff. Or the government has to put some strong regulation, has a very severe lawsuit, like Microsoft v. United States. Mm-hmm. Now probably will be a Microsoft and Facebook v. United States. But I mean, lawsuit is the final step. And there's many ways that can make things make things much more smoother for them to transmit from a problematic business model to a new business model. Yeah, and it's very interesting. I think 2-3 years ago, the CEO of Baidu still talking about people in China don't care about their privacy.
But now,
like 1 month ago,
it's on the Consumer Protection Day, March 5th.
Yeah.
So the government point out there are several companies that are violating basically like data protection, because China don't have data protection.
Well,
But
consumers
unless-
right. Consumers right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the changing is very fast. Only 1 or 2 years. We imagine that after 1 or 2 years. I mean, after the European government do something on those large tech giants, after the U.S. government calling Zuckerberg in the Congress, I think definitely Chinese government will do something very very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people's awareness will definitely change gradually. And there will be new business model behind this thing. There will be new industry standard. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting how it is really something that has been a bit of a global consciousness thing, and there have been different breaking points for each country. I think post in the U.S. maybe for Europe it was like a Snowden type thing that got people worried and anxious about it. In the U.S. it was probably Russia in the 2016 election and Cambridge Analytica and all of that sort of fallout. In China, there hasn't been like a giant hack on the level of Equifax that I guess has been publicized yet to get everyone freaked out that all of their purchases on WeChat are now everyone can download online or something. That hasn't necessarily happened, I guess, to my knowledge or to yours yet. But maybe it's interesting to think whether it will take a sort of mass event like that, or will the global conversation be enough to get people moving.
Yeah, I hope just there's no such event.
Sure.
Yeah, but definitely, I think there will be some event coming out, because the leaking of data is already being a very important and very severe global issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the global conversation over different countries, there will be this issue on the table, because let's say there's some very big Chinese company, they're making software for other people's other countries' users. They definitely should obey the law of the stricter, the more strict law of two countries. And when the different government talked about this issue, they were saying, "Oh, sure, I should follow up with this issue." Yeah,
I think a group of Chinese people gonna change really fast, because like the China's like economy has developed so fast in the past few decades. So there are a group of Chinese who, so just like my mother, so in the United States, some people at my mother's age still care about data privacy, but for my mother, she won't realize the issue, because just the economy develops so fast. So her ideology is still at the old age. But I think for the new generations, they will realize the problem very, very fast. Yeah, because they are all kind of like international citizen like us. Yeah.
So you have a project related to data privacy, and we were speaking over lunch. You said in talking to Chinese VCs, they have a very hard time wrapping their heads around it.
Yeah, the project, the company is called Dimension. The project is called Maskbook.io. You just check out Maskbook.io. It's like put a mask on every book. I can't say the book. What you know who.
We were already talking about Facebook.
Yeah. Anyway, so the saying is, I think people definitely will continue to use Twitter, Facebook, any platform they use day to day, but before these platforms shift from current business model to the new business model, there will be a transit, and we will try to build the transit, and we will try to build a new business model for them and for the whole big data or whole internet, social networks. And the product is like, okay, you can post whatever you like your day-to-day use of Facebook, but Facebook, the company, they cannot steal your data after you use the Maskbook plugin. It used new fancy stuff like blockchain and encryption. Yeah, I think encryption is one of the important part for data protection. Mark Zuckerberg himself, 2 weeks ago, he also wrote a blog about how Facebook should transit to end-to-end encrypted social network, and how we should issue the new Facebook coin. Yeah, but still, even I think himself figure out what he should do and what Facebook should do in the next step. seeing general public, also the board member of Facebook, and also a lot of employees, they don't figure this out. I mean, they spend 10 years of writing code, figure out how to give you the good recommendation, the best recommendation of advertisement.
Yeah.
And now you say, oh no, we don't do the data stuff. It's quite tough for them to realize the old model is wrong. We have to transit to the new model, especially for the venture capitalists. Not only here, but I think Chinese venture capitalists they take more time to understand this thing.
As I said, their ideology is very different because I think most of the venture capitalists, they're at their 40s or 50s. So it's roughly my mother's age. So their ideology is kind of like old as a, well, both. So, but I think they will catch up.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because in the Chinese tech ecosystems, just like everywhere, but particular, I think you have these like very aggressive trends, which all of a sudden become very hot. You had like bike steering, you had ICOs. Maybe a year from now, the new hot trend will be investing in these like data privacy companies or something.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting if and when that does catch on and how it plays out differently in the U.S. Than in China.
Yeah. I mean, I hope, but let's start from now because let's do it better earlier, because the more data we protect, the secure, the easier for people to translate to the new model, and you lose more, you gain more privacy on every social network. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anything else, Kat? We're looking for a new PhD advisor. So if there are any professors listening who'd like to find a lovely, enterprising young PhD candidate, do reach out. How can people best get in touch with you guys?
We have emails. It's just emails are better. So my email, or I just say it.
Yeah.
So it's kattgu7@gmail.com. Yeah.
So mine is suji.yan@dimension.im. So I'm open for investors and anyone who interested in the labor protection, maybe, because the programmers and employees in my company is quite flexible. I mean, some of them
you better practice what you preach, right?
Yeah. Just last month, one of the employees said, I will just look. My virtual wife in Japan will have a whatever new concert, anime character, and we should go. And he said I should go. I said, yeah, you go. And he worked remotely for coding, and it's fine. I mean, I think the creative job should be done in that way. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on China Econ Talk.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
China Econ Talk is edited by Jason McRonald and Kaiser Guo and is a proud member of the Sinica Network from SUP China. For other great shows on China, check out the Caixin Sinica Business Brief, the Pan Daily Tech Buzz China, the New Voices Podcast, and of course, the Sinica Podcast, now in its 9th year. Until next week.